this video, I'll share with you my full animation process of this clip. My skill set is my 20-year design career, and my tools are Blender 3D, the big, medium, small model shop Greeble, and Astronova packs, as well as Lens Sim. I'll discuss the most important principles to adhere to if you want to get started with animating scenes like this, and contrary to the traditional belief, it isn't perfect schooling. In fact, quite the contrary. Welcome to Technoble. My name is Rasmus. I'm an art director and a concept designer with 20 years of professional games development experience, and I'm on a mission to inspire and empower designers, makers, and creators design the future. So here in Blender, pretty much where we left off in terms of the look dev shot with the ship passing the camera. And normally what I do here is I leave the camera perfectly stationary. I leave the ship perfectly stationary in the y-axis so that I can move the camera and asteroids around here. And I'm not quite sure what the process will look like at this point in time, and I'm experimenting a little bit with having the ship pass the camera, as well as having a track to the camera track to this empty out in space there. And you can see over in the little preview there on the left that I'm toying a little bit with angles and rotation and kinds of things. And you'll find that pretty fast. With too many rotational objects and whatnot, things get quite complicated. So what I decided to do here is parent all the asteroids to an empty box, so I can maneuver this entire field as a singular object. I figured it might be good to have camera moving separately, ship moving separately, and asteroids moving separately, so that I can, manipulate them as I see fit. And since they're all linked, parented to the empty, I can just alt duplicate them out in space, so I can create this quite dizzying array of asteroids. And what I mentioned in the earlier video was that plenty of good reasons to make all kinds of complicated systems and scatter whatever, all kinds of things that I don't understand, and so I choose to go ahead with the method that I know, simply to not be held back too much of complicated things. You can see here I'm playing with positioning these asteroids in relation to the shot. Basically composition in space. As the camera passes, as the ship passes the camera pans across the scene, these asteroids will then enter the frame and exit the frame in more or less interesting ways. So I set it up really roughly, play with the motion back and forth, and adjust the positioning of the asteroids accordingly. Actually, this is a quite easy way to make a composition in time interesting. Very, very easy to maneuver the asteroids. You can see not so easy to maneuver the ship. And I pretty soon realized I had to skip the video here, jump on YouTube and relearn how to, model a spline that I can track the ship along. Not my favorite method, and it brought me massive amounts of headache. Thinking about it now, I should have moved the asteroid field and the camera, and then let the ship be positioned completely stationary, at least on the y-axis, so I could animate it on the z and the x-axis, including rotation and everything. That would have been much easier, I think. Not a big fan of this spline modeling, no, gotta say. But this was the method I chose, and I guess the other method drove me crazy enough to try, so that's where we are. I add some three-dimensionality to the curvature, so it's not just a flat highway, but has some spatiality on the different axes. I know I want the ship to cross the path of this asteroid field in a reasonably interesting way. And it's so rough to work with, Now it's just a car on a highway because I haven't done rotation and everything to it yet. Of course, that'll come. But if you animate in Blender, you know that you'll spend a lot of time, dealing with splines. It's almost like working in Illustrator, in a sense. lots of time spent moving these things around. And as you well know, if you're a fan of a used universe, and in this case Star Wars aesthetics, you know that the ships move more like airplanes. So that means you spend a lot of time with foreshadowing, or what do you say, weight balance and weight shifting and all kinds of things. But anyway, back to the asteroids. Here you can see I'm playing with the notion of the ship maneuvering past an asteroid, explaining the curve of this turn, and I figured it would be a nice interesting visual as well, having it pass, to utilize some of these asteroids passing close past the camera, as we saw in the look dev shot from last week. I know I need some size, I need some motion on it, so as the camera passes the asteroids and the ship passes at the same time, I figured it'd be a good base for some nice dynamic action. You notice the nice glow there on the ship exhaust. And of course, I can't help myself, I gotta place a lamp in the exhaust that can illuminate the backside of that asteroid. And I must say, I'm not referencing neither Empire nor which one with the Django Fett asteroid chase. I'm not really referencing that. It's just in my mind, and I figured that that's enough of a reference. But I seem to remember something about illumination on asteroids there, making it feel much more dynamic than Empire. Again, back to adjusting some asteroid positioning. After this pass here, you can see the engine lights illuminating the asteroid. And I'm constantly doing test renders just to see if the preview shows me what I need to see, which it does. It's a little woolly and a little fuzzy, and it takes a little time, but it works. So if you want to make your own science fiction scenes and you want to skip ahead a little bit, maybe you're a beginner and you're unsure of where to start, or maybe you're a seasoned pro and you want to speed up your workflow, the Big Medium Small Model Ship Rebels Asset Pack is a great start. It's a pack I made in collaboration with the team, and the intent of that is really to make a pack that feels like Lego, but for spaceship nerds, right? And that pack contains 600 plus items, lots of characters, and lots of little tiny bits so you can remix and build your own stuff. It also has a bunch of poses for these characters, and it has a bunch of hero ships as well that are pre-made for you, so that you can get started quickly. So again, as mentioned, whether you're curious or whether you're a pro that want to speed things up, check it out, link in the description. So now back to this space map here. There's something about contrast and brightness I need to play with a little bit. And I find the RGB curves in Blender acts really weird, in my opinion. It doesn't feel like Photoshop, Lightroom, or DaVinci for that matter. So I don't know if any of you guys have any reason for that or logic to that. It feels really odd to me. One of Blender's oddities. But you can see there's something about getting rid of some JPEG compression noise in the space and getting the right brightness. This, I think, looks pretty good. Not too sharp, I'm testing some different sizes of maps here, but it's about getting it not too sharp but not too fuzzy. Some of the techniques that involve doing it with shaders feel a little bit mathematical, a little bit perfect in my eyes. And I like having something that feels more analog, and I think this particular starfield feels really, really analog. Alright, back to focusing on this big asteroid. I had this idea I was exploring in the look dev, where I copy the asteroid into itself to get more detailing. And I know I want something big and chunky in the background, so I figured we'll do like a micro moon with this level of detailing. You can see I'm positioning it in the shot up top there, looking for some nice highlights and some nice framing. And again, it's about temporal layout, right? It's about having something that the ship can pass that looks interesting to the eye. And you can see here again, just adjusting some asteroids here and there to ensure that we have interesting shapes to fly past. Doing a similar trick for the far end of the shot. And I decided I need to spend some time populating this asteroid field here. You can see it's really a noodle work, right? It's like adjusting this, adjusting that, adjusting this, back and forth. And I suppose that's the zen part of it, right? You can get hours to pass by just fiddling with little stones. Now I want some asteroids that pass close to the camera, and you can see here I'm toying with it. Again, lessons learned from the look dev, where close vicinity passive asteroids and motion blur is going to look great. Almost as if the camera is avoiding them as well. But again, decide to come back to asteroid field, populate that a bit more. You can see how simplistic this method is. You know what? No regrets on this. Absolutely not. Super easy, super manageable. I can twist it like I see fit. I can warp it. I can do whatever. Again, I'm just speaking because I don't know what I'm missing out on, but I think this was really easy. As long as the computer can pull it, you know, why not? I decided to add the old trick of a planet on a disk, and I have a little render in my bank. If I was to take this sequence to the next level or take it more seriously, I would do proper planets or maybe some of my cheaty disks or whatever. But I know I have a picture laying around and from an older sequence, and I decided to use that, plug it in, position it facing the camera, and make it self-illuminant, which means it just casts its own light out from the texture basically. And again, now comes the question of composition in terms of where should it be in the shot, what works. You can see I'm orienting the sun towards the direction of the light. Again, not scientifically accurate, but it works, does the job. I figured I'd want it over here. You see how the ship is in silhouette underneath that asteroid. I figured I could cut them out. Both asteroids actually have a shadow that intersects with the disk of the planet. The ship passes underneath that and is in shadow. Looks kind of interesting. I'm rotating to get some more interesting light and shadow. There you go. That looks good. Just gonna make sure the camera doesn't collide with it. So you see what I mean? The big asteroid there that's sunlit from the left is shadow sided on the intersecting with the planet, and then these stones here gets positioned accordingly. That's really the fun, and it's also really the serious part. No, what do you mean? What do you mean? What am I saying here? The part of this that's really important is that composition in space and time and allowing yourself to get ideas. This particular shot with the ship in silhouette like this and the asteroids is really strong. It's completely different from what I did in the look dev, but it was an idea I got while toying with this scene here. And you can see these little spotlights here that look kind of cool. You can see the difference that lens sim makes. It makes it all grungy and out of focus and, you know, Soviet lensy. Actually, the Helios is simulated in there, so you can do that if you want to. Very cool. And talking about the idea before about the silhouette, I know I want to have more shadow on that ship so that it actually is in shadow as it, you know, enters the disk of the planet, comes behind the asteroid, and out again. I think, you know, this composition trick here, this is really where it's all at. And the more time you spend on that, the more exciting your sequence is going to get. Toying with this rotation, alignment, weight of the ship. Again, considering Star Wars spaceships behave more like airplanes. Well, at least in the old trilogy before some of the TV shows. Yeah, I'm noodling with this, you know, for too long for the video to be interesting, so it takes a lot of time and takes a lot of effort getting that weight correct. So I know I need some flares here, so that's why I'm using my Flares Wizard plugin. Adding a little orb there and adding a flare to that. I like a bright flare, sure, but maybe this is a little bit much. I think also the lens sim scales up the flare effect a little bit because of how it simulates the light passing through lenses. So sometimes in Blender, when you use multiple add-ons, it can get a little complicated. Sometimes they don't play nice. You'll see more examples in a little bit. For example, here you can see that this spot, the point of the flare and the light itself doesn't match in the render. although it matches in the model. So yeah, you know me, let's move the thing manually rather than solve the problem at the source, because I don't know how to do that. Sometimes I've rendered them out separately, separate passes, and adjusted them later in post, which was a thing I didn't feel would be a good idea for this particular shot, so I'm trying to maneuver them around in space instead. And then you have to manually adjust the power. There are, I think, probably automated ways where you can set up systems. It gets a little complicated, so I figured just do a bell curve for the power and intensity of the effect, and model that with the classic Blender tools. And here I'm struggling a bit with the setup, the logic. Can I copy it? I cloned it? But you know, sometimes when you're a little quick on your fingers, you mess things up. So finally get it sorted. 2 flare emitters positioned and hand animated to be different. You can see the closer they are to the camera, they need to be readjusted. So I need to not only animate the intensity but also the goddamn position. But you know, what don't you do for the passion of the arts? And check in the render, you can see some weird haloing here. So again, lots and lots and lots of noodling with this particular detail. Though I kind of like how it looks. It has sort of an interesting greasy lens kind of look to it. I figured the ship should have some of that light cast onto the asteroids. I'm playing with the power, intensity, and scale of that light to hit the asteroid. You can see that nice rim light there on the right-hand side of the asteroid. It's kind of cool. You can see how the preview is a little bit frustrating because it blinks and clips and looks all janky. In lens sim, you can turn on lens simulation so the preview gets a little quicker. I forgot, I suppose. So to look back at the planet, make that a little bit more luminous. So up the contrast and up the brightness so that we get that both the sea and the clouds quite bright. You can see some of that atmosphere scattering there in the render. Gets a little bit more obvious as well. Making everything feel really lensy and really organic and analog. See those halos around the headlights look really analog here. And sometimes when you render a whole sequence with 120, 150 frames with cycles and plugins and whatnot, it can take a while. So you want to do a bunch of test renders to make sure that you're comfortable. Alternatively, of course, you can render out every fifth frame, you know, in low resolution or whatever. There's many ways of doing it, but I try and do it on the spot, just get a sense of it. And like I say, the work is really repetition, you know. Any creative will tell you that the more rounds you can get on target, what do you say, the more sessions you can, the more you can get to sleep on it, the more you can get to go back and just double check what you're doing, the better, right? So I'm doing that real time here. You can see I am deciding to turn these here headlights up into the asteroid so we get a little more wonderful play with the light. You can see how I don't care about if it makes sense or not, because in the rest of the sequence I don't want the lights to look like this, so I'm actually animating them to point into the asteroid and then come back to normal afterwards, because I just want that effect. think it's a really eye-catching moment. And since all the objects have that box there, I can just parent it to that and it'll animate along with the spline and everything. So it's quite easy to modify the scene on the go and, you know, add to the ship. You can see here I'm really working on the weight, working on angles, making everything feel dynamic, feel interesting. And I gotta admit that I forget what axes are what. All the curves, so it's a little confusing to me. One of the problems with this one is that I'll come back to that a little bit later, but it's almost too perfect. It's a little bit like a roller coaster. I want my ships to skid and slide a little bit. I want them to, and that's why people are complaining about it looking like airplanes. See the headlights are now offset again. That weight shifting and everything, I like to see the spacecraft behave like aircraft in the sense that I want them to deserve their movement. I want them to have momentum, and I want them to, almost as if you had air in space, which you obviously don't, that the ship has to lean into the direction it wants to go before the air builds up underneath the wing or the surfaces, and then the ship is allowed to move, right? You know, when an aircraft stalls or a fish swims or something like that, there's that sense of build up momentum that you earn by compressing the material you're in as a ship. So things like that is something I think is quite funny, quite interesting to do. So here I decided I need to have a classic game development trick where you just have a little nebulous airbrush puff, and you can use that as a special effect texture, and I just decide to make it transparent and brightness. Actually, I'm so used to working in EV and in games engines that I'm struggling with cycles transparency sometimes, still to this day. But anyway, you can see I'm colorizing it and making it transparent, and then I'm placing it sort of, kind of, maybe like a ring-ish, not really explaining it too much. And I'm getting a width on it that feels reasonably all right. And if you were to do this in greater detail, you could add noise. You could probably have a middle ground on it too. Let's say you put this out on the far end, and then in the middle ground you would render a field of asteroids with lighting on them, so it would just feel like an infinite sea. I might do that for other sequences in this little asteroid field sequence that I'm sort of thinking of building later. And I mean, in that sense, maybe that could be part of the journey, right? We learn together how to make the quickest and most effective way to make a hacked up asteroid field effect, planet ring system, whatever it is. If it's a planet ring system, you can see it doesn't align to the equator of the planet. So yeah, maybe that means I need to re-render it now. What's cool about this is it allows the shadow part of the asteroids out in the distance to have some background to be drawn on, which gives the scene a nice interesting layer of depth. There's so much stuff happening. Maybe the challenge is even to make it not insanely overwhelming. Yeah, and here I'm working on a little bit more skid for the craft, so it drifts a little bit more, making it a little bit more heavy. Yeah, so what you just saw there was a real process. I did lots of edits because I had a lot of noodling and tweaking that was just too repetitive to really be enjoyable in video form. And I think that proves the first point. Iteration is super key, you know, and coming back over and over and over. Actually seeing it now, I'm like, there are still things I want to improve. you know, for better or worse, you're never done, right? You just stop. So the first key principle is really iteration. You know, don't give up on that, and give yourself enough time to allow yourself that time to really come back. The second principle is really what I talk about quite a lot in my videos, which is to let it go, man. You don't have the perfect series of how-tos and everything lined up, and you don't have to study this and that and this and that and have the perfect techniques. You know, the asteroid field there is silly, but I did it in an evening, no problem. You know, rather than having to learn a new thing, which means I don't quite do it, and I'll, you know, waste my time doing something I know instead. So have that fearless mentality, approach it as if it's tonight or nothing, because that'll then buy you the time to iterate, right? And the last principle, I don't have a last that's the two things I want to say. If you want to see how I did the look dev and how I sort of gained the confidence to just get started with this video, you can check this one out, or there. That's the process of the look dev, and there's a playlist over here as well. But that's it for tonight. I'll see you.